Hey guys and girls, Board now back with you. On this video I will be talking about the 6th episode of season 4 of The Handmaid's Tale. It is called Vows, and full spoilers from the start of this review. So yeah, thanks for joining me, and this is a good episode. I think this was an important episode in the whole reckoning of the season, and now where we're going moving forward with June. And by the end of this episode, she is back in Canada. She's reunited with Luke, and the whole importance of that and her decision is sold very well in this. There's some great drama back and forth between June and Moira. The actress who plays Moira actually does a really good job, because she's always been a good actress, but she's obviously never had as much of the spotlight as June or certain other characters. So those scenes were really good. They were very convincing, and the stubbornness that we see from June and the determination to stay in Gilead and to find her daughter, to find Hannah, is very true to her character, especially this season. They've almost been building that since the start of this season, obviously over all the seasons, but sort of this season it's sort of come back into focus because she has sort of she has become this rebel, and she has sort of had that in her sights, I think. So that's all very well done. And there is just the one plot in this episode, which is that, which I don't mind. I think it makes sense, because although I've had some complaints about June and about that plot maybe taking too much of the focus, the whole her now going back to Canada plot is such a big change, is such a big movement, then it makes sense to dedicate an episode to it. So I think the hope is now then they will obviously spread the storylines out again like they had been. Obviously with June back in Canada, there's room to like include those other plots alongside hers anyway. But yeah, I mean that's a sort of a good way forward. I think there's just one or two like nitpicks with this episode, or one or two moments or concerns maybe, because as I said there, maybe a concern that the focus might become too much on June, because she obviously has this determination to go back to Gilead and to find Hannah and all the rest of it. And I think that's the danger, that then it could sort of fall back into like spinning its wheels a bit. Obviously it's a good development, it's a fresh development, it's quite meaty potentially, her going back to Canada. And whereas I think you could have said maybe it might have been better if they just had her go back to Canada, obviously that would have felt a bit forced. So I think they had to have a struggle, and they had to have June logically come to that decision by the end of the episode. And so really they sell all the big moments in this episode very well. I think there's just one or two contrivances that just felt like, well, it's just for drama a bit, it's just that we can string this out a little bit. But the actual scenes and the execution, I can't really fault too much. I like obviously when the stuff with Moira and June, and when they first bump into each other, and how June is sort of in a trance. She's really still thinking about Janine, and is Janine still alive? And we see this interesting thing where Moira has to try and talk June round, but she has to like say to her, well, if she's still alive, she'll be at like the hospital or the infirmary or that station. And it is a tactic on Moira's part to like get June away and to convince her that she has to come with her. And that's quite clever, because later in the episode June calls Moira out on that. She actually is like critical and says, you tricked me into coming back into Canada when I didn't want to. Now, it's a harsh way to put it, but it's sort of true. I guess, Moira was thinking of getting June away, and just obviously Moira's in a very tough place in this episode because she clashes with her girlfriend Terry. I think her girlfriend's name is Terry, who's also part of the rescue and aid mission. And I think one or two small complaints. One complaint I think is with this scene that it's a little bit heavy-handed. And what I mean by that is Terry stands her ground and shoots Moira down and says, no, we can't make an exception. We can't. June isn't any more important than these refugees, because you've got all these refugees at this fence, all looking for aid, all looking to escape. So there's this fight between Moira and Terry, and that's Terry's reasoning, which you can understand. What I like about that scene, though, and the drama, is that naturally it is very it is a dilemma, it is compelling. You can see it from Moira's point of view as well, because she hasn't seen June for years, and it's her best friend, and she just wants to get her to a safe place. So you can see it from both points of view. But I think ultimately, I definitely come down on Terry's side. I do understand that. But yeah, the scene itself, because Moira then goes behind her back and sneaks June onto the boat, and it sort of cuts to the shot of like the refugees at the fence sort of shouting and upset, and Terry's like telling them, we'll be back for you later. And yeah, I think that was just a bit heavy-handed. I think they could have dialed that down a little bit, but it kind of develops that the June's on the boat without Terry knowing, but then Terry tells Moira later then, hey, the government are gonna like check the ship as we sort of come in. They're gonna, as part of like an agreement. So that's when the cat is out the bag and she has to tell her about June being aboard. And again, it leads to this sort of dilemma where that they're then debating what should we do, and the whole rationale from Terry is that, hey, if we don't give her up and they find her, then it's sort of it ruins any chances we have of like a rescue mission in the future. Like, her whole thing is that because she's an escape handmaid, they'll hold it against us, and we won't be able to do any of these missions in the future. And it's a good scene, actually, drama-wise, again, because they do have a back and forth, and you can clearly see that Moira is letting her feelings sort of get in the way, and her personal connection to June. But it's a good scene because there's like a balanced discussion. It's not all black and white. There's like a crew member who is actually in favour of like keeping June aboard and not turning her over. So I do like that about it. And in the end, it's sort of a good character moment for June, where she just like interrupts them arguing and she's like, yeah, just hand me over. I'm no more important than anyone else. But what they do in the end is that they give her like a fake document, and you get like the check on the ship, and that she has to pretend to be someone else. And there's this moment again where they're sort of teasing you a little bit, where she's being asked like questions, and at one point she's asked about the bruises on her face, and just by the look in her eyes and the pause, you can see that she's potentially gonna like just tell the truth. And this again goes to the character, because at this point she's in the frame of mind of she wants to go back. She doesn't want to go to Canada. And Moira steps in and just says, it was in all the action back there, all the conflict, she hurt herself, and sort of saves her bacon another thing about it is that it's not just that June wants to go back to Gilead to find and save Hannah. It's then it's also then she's afraid to face Luke, because obviously it's the first time she's seen him since being taken away from him. And we get some flashbacks, not surprisingly, to her and Luke in the past when they first decided to move in together and get married. And that stuff definitely adds something. It's obviously relevant because we see when June becomes pregnant, and they're obviously really happy about it. So that stuff is definitely relevant because it obviously brings, again, Hannah back into the focus. But in any case, it's also reveals a bit more about Luke, and that because largely he has been quite a clean-cut, likeable guy throughout the show, and it actually reveals that he mistreated his ex-wife, for example. So at some point, at least, he did like have an addiction and wasn't as clean-cut and nice as we now know him. So Moira in the past is like casting doubts on him. So it's all solid stuff. It's all quite relevant to like the present stuff. So yeah, ultimately June has to come to this decision where the way Moira like reasons it to her is that because of the resources in Canada, and obviously you'll be safe there or safer, then we can regroup. We can go for Hannah later on. And June obviously is honest also about saying, I can't really face Luke. And it's a really emotional scene where she just sort of breaks down and says, I failed Hannah as a mother. And yeah, how can I face Luke now? So it's almost like this idea of shame that she hasn't gotten Hannah back and she's coming back without her. So it's a very powerful scene, and I think would be quite relatable to people, or you can at least imagine it from like a parent's point of view. So really good drama, actually. And ultimately Moira just says, well, why not give him a chance? He's stood by you, he's waited all these years for you. And that's how we end the episode, with them back in Canada and with June reunited with Luke. So that does set up some potentially meaty stuff moving forward. And I think my one big thing is that I just don't want it to become just the June show, June and her determination to get Hannah back. I think I want the stuff with the other characters, and again, maybe not to spin its wheels too much, but it was a good episode. I was impressed with this one, and fingers crossed, because it's still episode 6, so there's still a few to go this season, so fingers crossed they've paced it well enough that we're really going to peak and get some good stuff. Obviously, 1 or 2 doubts still, but we'll see how it goes. But I'm positive on this episode. So that's episode 6 of The Handmaid's Tale of this season. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Like and subscribe, and also share me out on social media. And I'll see you guys again soon. Goodbye.